Rev up your engines! All right, here's a car they don't make anymore. A CLK Mercedes. What went right? What went wrong? Should you buy one? Should you run away as fast as you can? Well, you're going to find out how this one held up. Get you an idea what these things actually did, if they were worth owning, and whether if you own one, it's time to get rid of it or not. Okay, the CLKs were made for a few years. They were all made in Germany. So at least they're pretty solid. Being made in Germany, there's one thing you really got to watch out for these things. Look under the hood to show you. This will show you one thing with these cars. They do have a tendency of rusting. They weren't coated all that well when they built them originally. So if you're ever looking at one, get yourself a nice little flashlight. Start looking around. Now this one actually is in pretty good shape. It's not all rotted out. This one's been taken care of and it hasn't rusted out. If you crawl under one of those babies and it's rusted, run away. Now, these have the pretty low profile tires and he's broken quite a few wheels. You get a little bit rougher ride with a low profile and you can drive fast in them, but big potholes and these wheels don't go together, so he's broken a few of those. That's something that you got to realize if you're going to buy one of these things. Don't overpay. Mercedes have relatively low resale values. One thing you got to really understand is people are always nuts about convertibles. The CLKs came in two. Coupe like this, that's a two-door, but they also come with convertibles. The convertibles are worth more money. That's just the way that it goes. If you're a person who doesn't give a crap about convertibles, go ahead and get a coupe because it's going to be a lot cheaper than buying a convertible. It's the 3200cc V6 engine. The transmissions on these things were the weakest point. They would often go out as they age and cost a fortune. And when you burn out a Mercedes transmission, start shelling money out like no tomorrow. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about. And speaking of money, okay, this thing actually was totaled a while ago because it got hit in the back. He bought it back and fixed it. That's one thing about these Mercedes is it takes a little bash in the back when they're old like this and they will total them because the parts cost so much money and the labor is so expensive. If you own one, my advice is get an insurance rider on your insurance. You get full coverage and have a professional come in and evaluate the car. Then put that valuation on your insurance plan because these insurance companies can do whatever they want. Like you say, this thing, it was totaled and hey, he only had to spend like $4 grand to fix the thing. Why would you total a car like that, right? And that included fixing some of the rust that it had on the side that wasn't part of the accident, right? But they will get rid of these things super fast, and especially, a lot of people don't know, if you overpay for one of these used, and then you get in a wreck, you're going to be in the bucket and you're going to lose a whole bunch of money. So get somebody to evaluate it. It used to be, it was a little harder to do because of the values of cars. But today, since the average new car is now $48,500 in the United States, a new record, right? They're not going to think squat about you having a guy evaluating a car and say, oh, your car's worth $25,000, right? That's not that much money these days, right? If you don't and somebody hits you in the side or the rear, the other company's insurance, they'll look at it and say, 21-year-old car, we'll give you $3 grand for it, and away you go. What are you going to do, take them to court, right? But if you have on your insurance a rider that says, this car's been taken care of, it's worth this much money, then legally they can't argue about it. It would be as if they hit a later model Mercedes that already has a bunch of value and they won't get it totaled out because some clown runs into you. Keep that in mind because it's a big deal. If you get hit and you end up losing your car because some idiot hits the back of your car, now this guy knew body shopping people, so he got it fixed up and got the car back. They put a sticker on it. Salvage vehicle. And this is from the state of New Hampshire. Now, I got to give kudos to the state of New Hampshire for putting those stickers on. It says penalty of law if you remove the sticker, because if you did and then you sold it to somebody, they wouldn't know. Well, Louisiana has laws like that too, that when they have big floods, they make it that those cars cannot be sold to be registered on the roads of the United States at all. That they can only be sold in the United States for parts or to ship overseas to sell to foolish foreign people that don't know the car was through a giant hurricane and flooded out and was pretty much useless. Kudos to the state of New Hampshire for putting those stickers on. Now, it's not like he bought this as a salvage vehicle. He had it all these years, right? He knew he got hit and he got it fixed, so he didn't really care, right? Normally, if somebody's going to buy a car like this, like say somebody brought me this car and they didn't know the history of it, right? I'd look at that sticker and I'd say, if I were you, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole because it's been totaled by an insurance company. But in the case of this Mercedes, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was hit in the back, plastic stuff broke, that automatic window shade that goes up and down was broken, and that was $2,000 to fix. It doesn't work now, but I mean, do you really need that? This thing has over 111,000 miles on it. He's put 70,000 of those miles on it. He's had pretty good luck with the car. You can see it was made in Stuttgart, Germany. There's the mileage. I mean, check it out. Back in the day, Mercedes made good leather. You can re-dye that. It's not even ripped. It's got a reasonable amount of room in the back, vents and everything in the back too. And as you can see, Mercedes was the first company to start putting all these crazy buttons all over the place for everything. I've had Mercedes-Benz owners, they didn't even know what half of those buttons did. You know, it's all car, it's got an SOS system. We'll start her up. Smooth running engine. Like I say, the one thing, if you're looking at one of these, is you want to get a good road test of the tranny to see how the transmission is going. But being a mechanic who's done stuff for ages, we're going to check everything out with this computer. So we got a CLK 320 3.2 liter gasoline coupe with left-hand steering. This is all that wants to take a little while, so we'll start looking at stuff. Everything's still in pretty good shape. I mean, the visors are still there. There's nothing, no problem with them. The interior's clean. The wood trim's still in good shape. Do an automatic scan. See? It says it's got 2 faults in the transmission, so we're going to check that out when we're done scanning it. Like I said, that is the weak point of these cars, their automatic transmissions. It's going to take a while because it's an old Mercedes, but it's still a complex Mercedes. You can see it's been going for a couple minutes, only 20% done. Oh, you're rounding up at 73 and 52%. Who knows, this might set a new record. You remember the old one I had? We'll see if it sets a new record, but it runs good for him. He's happy with the way it runs and stuff. As these things age, with all the computer crap that they have, you can't be a perfectionist because there's just too many things that it's going to find. It's going to find stuff with instrument panel, AC system. I guarantee you, they just all do that. And you can see now it's diagnosing it. Well, it's playing rap music, so I don't know if it's diagnosing the music or it's diagnosing itself. Well, it found some more trouble codes, so it's probably got radio codes too. Yeah, there it is. Audio 4 faults. He did say the tape player doesn't work. Who the heck carries tapes anyways anymore? Got to 100%, and there's 87 trouble codes. This will give you an idea what goes on. Here's a couple of the codes. P2314. 1 or more messages from control unit N73 EIS EZS control unit are not available on the CAN bus. CAN timeout failure. Okay, means something's going on with the computer system. Messages aren't going through the CAN bus line, the cables that send all the information. It's just typical on these things as they age. I'm going to go through all these things. So what we're going to do is, the transmission is the thing that I always worry about in this. And here's the 2 codes, P2314 and P2315. And it is that the CAN bus line and control unit A1 are not available on a CAN bus stored events. Realize that these are computer controlled, electronically activated automatic transmissions. They are so complex they would make your head spin, as is the rest of the car, because if I analyzed all those 85 trouble codes, right? This would be the world's most boring video. It'd be such technical stuff. It runs good enough. So what we're going to do, just for giggles, a quick erase, and then we're going to go through the data for important stuff like the engine. So as you can see, I've erased all the codes. The only one that's permanent is the steering column module that has supply voltage to the control module is too low. Just for kicks, we'll try to erase it again. It's the only one that stayed. And we'll start her up. There's more information that you could shake 1,000 sticks at, right? You can check the engine when you're driving, check at a cold start. You can check all kinds of stuff. Here we're checking the oxygen sensor system. You can see it's all black. It's all good data. Now you can see here it's saying that the oil temperature is too low, but I mean, this thing's been running a while. I'm assuming that the sensor doesn't work anymore. Yeah, it's really almost impossible for the oil temperature to be too low. He drove a long way to get here, right? So just another sensor that's not working correctly. And you see that all the time on these things as they age. There's so much electronic crap that if you're not losing oil, the car runs okay, doesn't overheat, gets the normal gas mileage. You just live with stuff like that. Running wise, this thing's running pretty good. Take this thing for a drive. No backup camera, it's too old. A little puff of smoke coming out of the back. So, indeed, this thing does burn a little oil, which is pretty typical for these V6 engines. And they're relatively low to the ground, so I'm going to go over this bump pretty slow. They've got really fancy suspension systems, and here we go on the horrible Rhode Island roads, and, hey, still a really smooth ride on these bumpy roads for a car that's as old as this thing is. Even though they're old, the Mercedes can still ride quite smoothly. But realize when their fancy suspension system breaks down, you better start shelling out thousands and thousands of dollars to fix them. And the funny thing is, this doesn't rattle too much, it's pretty smooth. But one of the main reasons these cars failed in the United States was because they said, they're the cheaper made ones, they rattle. For somebody with Mercedes-Benz lifestyle, they don't want any rattles at all. To me, this thing's pretty good, doesn't rattle, but that's the main reason these vehicles failed. People thought they were too cheaply made. Here we go. It's a V6 engine, but it's got plenty of horsepower. Yeah, a little bit of smoke came out the back, but I mean, it's running quite well. And this transmission is shifting well. It did have those transmission codes, but those are all electronic CAN bus, computer failure for the computer line somewhere. Who knows? Some tiny sensor could have a problem. A wire could have a problem. It still shifts really well. Really, I gotta say, it's still a pretty smooth car, you know? And it was totaled. And it's still going pretty good. Even though it was totaled because it just got hit in the back and there's too much body damage and it's so old they totaled it. I have to say, if it wouldn't have had that sticker and the guy didn't tell me that the car was totaled, I would have never thought this car was ever totaled. I don't hear any bearing noises. It corners great, brakes great, shifts great, so just a tiny whack on the back of one of these will total them out, realize that. But I also have to say, hey, it's pretty typical. Seeing what, 87 trouble codes? These things are such complex monstrosities as they age. All kinds of wacky stuff. But it runs good, it stops good, it corners good, it shifts good. So, hey, if you're not a fanatic about your car, you get one of these things cheap, used, you can have a little bit of fun. So there you have it, a solid little car. Fun to drive. Yes, there are endless money pits if you're not a mechanic, right? And there's all kinds of things you'd need to check out, rust and things like that if you bought a used one. But they're still fun to drive, solid little cars, as long as you're not a fanatic about those 87 or so trouble codes. And there's things that you really don't care about. Hey, it drives fine, it shifts fine, pretty good shape. You know, it was made in Germany. They stopped making them because sales numbers were too low. It just didn't fit the bill of the Mercedes elite. They wanted bigger, fancier, faster cars, and it just wasn't their thing. This was made as one of their first kind of economy type cars. They weren't cheap, but for Mercedes, they were, right? Made in Germany, they're still rolling down. These things are 10 times better than the crap they're making in Alabama these days. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.